um, she had really grown up in her schooling and her thinking and processing in the States, and it was very sad. And I thought at that point, okay, I need to leave to give my daughter the opportunity to learn in English, because Roong Aroon is a Thai program and the teaching is in Thai. And it was at that moment I really thought, wow, I wish Roong Aroon had an international school. And it was a seed that kind of went into my head that it would be really wonderful to have a school like Roong Aroon that, you know, was available for students. There really wasn't, even in the international schools in Thailand, there really wasn't anything quite like it available at that time. So that's how I began my international school journey for a number of years. And it was just an interesting series of coincidences that brought me into knowing that Roong Aroon was ready and considering beginning an international program. And so I first approached Achan Papapat, and then I approached Kun Suwana, who is now our executive director, and we began discussions. So that's just sort of a quick nutshell of my history with Roong Aroon. But it's important, if anyone is not aware of the history of Roong Aroon, to know that it's a very long-standing, holistic school with a commitment to zero waste and sustainability that I feel is quite unparalleled. And commitment to the whole child that's really unique and quite special and beautiful to be part of. So again, I'm super grateful that I have this opportunity to come back to Roong Aroon and work on this amazing, challenging, but awesome project. Let's see. Okay, so just to give a brief overview that, you know, it's a work in progress still, but we began first with some very important discussions about our core values and our goals and how might we achieve our vision. So Kun Suwana and I sat down and really thought about what is it that we expect the children who graduate from Roong Aroon itself, as well as our international program, what is it that we really want them to be as people? What important points do we want them to take away with them into the world to develop them? And what are the qualities we want to have them as their foundation? So we looked at a number of things from Roong Aroon and developed these 7 qualities of the Roong Aroon graduate. At this point, we had looked at a number of options, and I was coming from a long time of work with the International Baccalaureate Organization's middle years program, and we could see a number of parallels. Roong Aroon itself has done a lot of research into different kinds of educational frameworks. And so we could see a lot of parallels and a lot of potential using the International Baccalaureate's middle years program framework. A lot of people might know of the IB and think about the diploma program, which is very structured and exam-based, but the middle years program is quite different. It's a framework, not a curriculum. You can fit what you want into it, but the commitment there is to inquiry-based learning and development of qualities. We call them learner profile attributes, but development of qualities inside the students. So at its core, over the whole of the primary years program, middle years program, diploma or career-related program, we seek to develop these attributes in the students. What I've noticed from other IB schools that I've been in is that these kind of come secondary. And what I felt was basing the learning from the place of the student and really looking at the development of these attributes was something quite important and foundational. And this was something that I knew at Roong Aroon was also something quite important and foundational. So we looked at our graduate profile, we looked at the IB learner profile, and as an IB school, we have to also consider the IB mission statement and develop our own school vision and mission in line with this particular mission statement. Again, it was not easy, but it wasn't that challenging for us because we felt already that Roong Aroon either matched or kind of stretched or extended a lot of the framework and the pedagogical expectations that are in the IBMYP. So we looked at everything together and came up with a core vision and mission statement. The second paragraph here is something that is really important to understanding our mission as a school, that to enable each of our students to transform, this idea of student transformation, from being a person who knows to being a person who is, all members of our community. So we're not just looking to actuate this transformation in our students, we're also looking to actuate transformation in all members of the community. And one thing that Achan said to us at the beginning of this year in a meeting she had with all of the whole school was, whenever we have any situation or problem or confusion with our students, it's important that we go back to our own practice and go back to ourselves and really reflect on what's in ourselves and what are we bringing and what is our practice. So this is something that's also very core to the school and that we felt was important going forward, that our students and teachers and parents, have this commitment to these 3 points in self-development as well as community development. So as you can imagine, it is a little difficult to find holistic trained teachers and to find teachers who are going to come to work in a very natural setting. Our environment is planned chaos of a jungle. And we do not use air conditioning. We also expect to be outdoors quite a lot. We do many community activities like cooking together, and we are in charge of cleaning our own spaces. So, having something that looks quite traditional for the international school world as the IBMYP, but put in this very different and much richer environment is quite a challenge. And finding teachers that are willing to embrace those challenges is kind of an ongoing development for us. And our recruiting process, often people in my initial interview with them ask me, hey, are you trying to get me to join you, or are you trying to scare me away? Because I want to be very realistic about the challenges that they're going to face in terms of physical, emotional, and psychological, because there's a lot that is going on normally in a school, but at our school as well. You've got cultural and physical environment issues that come into play. So after we try to find who we feel are our ideal candidates, then how do we train them? How do we help them understand our vision and values? And again, this is an area we're still developing and working on. And for admissions at the moment, we're now in our second year of operation with students. All of our students right now have come from Roong Aroon School itself. So they've transitioned from the Thai program to the international program, with the exception of 3 students who knew of the program, knew other families, and chose to join us from outside the school. We are looking to open up and accepting more students from other schools and hopefully other foreign students as well. But at the moment, we're poised. We're poised to begin that. So I was thinking about that discussion of hope this morning. And, we opened in the middle of a pandemic, and we have faced many challenges opening a new school during COVID. And a lot of what we do at the moment is still aspirational, trying to bring those hopes and put them into practice and into reality. And in some cases we are successful, and in some cases we're still working. So how do we bring these things into practice? So with our teachers, we try to do a lot of different activities. Our field studies from the Roong Aroon School are very intense. They're not like field trips. We really want to immerse the students in an environment, in a village where they have to interact with people and take part in community activities. So when we had our first pioneer teachers come in, we tried to do a few different field studies for them to immerse them in that similar feeling, to have an understanding of what we mean by field studies. This is to an area not far from the school that actually is slowly sinking under the water due to global warming and pumping of aquifers. So we met with the local people there, as well as got to see and talk with different people in the village about what was going on and their perspective. We also talked a lot with teachers about their hopes and fears, tried to identify where we felt what we wanted to see happen. Again, in order to have our own mindset and understanding of each other. Also, Kun Smisa Chwenchoronsuk, who is our managing director, she does a lot of work with the teachers on mindset and daily life. And on the right here, they had read a book that was about wise consumption. And so they all read this booklet and then discussed it and thought about, the importance of these as core values. And we also had to do a number of IB workshops as well to help the teachers understand the framework and the objectives of their subjects and the process of authorizing with the IB MYP. So teachers have to have a very steep taking on board of our school life and our zero waste policy. So this is actually just one of the posters at our school about our different waste management systems. We have a water system that treats wastewater. And these are just some pictures of some of the elements of that system. And we also have a recycling center at the school. I just took this little video yesterday. This is the tidiest you'll ever see it because, of course, we've been learning online and we're hoping to come back to school in November. But students actually will take the waste bins from their classrooms and go and sort everything out. Everything is really labeled. It's an amazing system, and it really helps make the concept of reducing our waste, reusing what we can, and recycling where we are able, a reality on a daily basis, not just as an idea, but a real day-to-day basis. So I'd like to show you a short video now, kind of about our first year. I'm hoping this will give you an idea or an overview of just sort of what it looks like at our school and a little bit of the activities that we engaged in. So in our first year, we were making use of some other buildings as attached to the secondary program at Roong Aroon School. And during that time, they were completing, as you saw at the end of that video, they were completing a new building for us. So I realized that last night I was supposed to add pictures of the new building. So unfortunately, I don't have those to share with you, but it's amazing. I have a little bit of the exterior that you'll be able to see, but I didn't take pictures of our beautiful science lab. Our library is in the process of being stocked, and our classrooms are all done. It's really quite impressive and really lovely how in the development of the buildings for the school that an emphasis is really put on making the environment as natural as possible. And you really feel like you are in the trees when you're in this building. Remember when we first started and Achan had not wanted any building over 2 stories tall. And when I came back more recently to visit, and we had quite like a 5-story tall building. I said, Achan, you said we weren't going to have tall buildings. And she said, oh, well, Tamara, the trees grew. So everything is done to really work in tandem with the natural environment. And the thing that we often forget when we walk around Roong Aroon is that that's actually a planned environment. It looks very natural and like the growth is completely unplanned, but it really has been planned to provide students with different spaces for learning, from the pond where they can boat and canoe, get muddy, watch monitor lizards swim, and different water birds come in the evening and fish, to the playground that is surrounded by old growth banyan trees, to a tree that is like a grandfather tree they can climb in and sit on, and they actually do a whole bunch of different movement activities with. Everything has been planned to provide spaces for students to explore the natural environment. And both buildings and natural environment have spaces that involve a little danger, so that students can take risks and not always feel that they're in a safely controlled space. So as you can see from this question, this is a very important question that we have to explore, because Roong Aroon is steeped in Buddhist traditions and values and teaching. We have many events at school aligned with different Buddhist holidays and practices. And so how, if you're creating an international school, how do you bring those Buddhist practices and values in and help develop the mindfulness and what we call mental maturity that's going to help students thrive as individuals? And one of the things that came to me through Achan, landed on my desk, was this book and a resume and this information about called Victoria Subarana. And she had developed a pedagogy for transformation. And it was one of those things I had no message, no note. I didn't know what this was on my desk. Like, I've got a resume. Is she applying for my job? Is this something like, I didn't know what it was. It was quite interesting. So she ended up having a workshop, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go. I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm going to go and see this. And I was so happy and grateful that I went, because then I immediately asked if we could invite Victoria to join our school, to bring her mental maturity, her pedagogy for transformation to our school, to help develop what I guess might be considered the social emotional learning or mindfulness practices in the school. So I'm going to switch a moment here and let Victoria introduce herself.
Everyone, I am Victoria Subirana, the mental maturity teacher at Roong Aroon School. I'm very happy to be part of this fabulous team. In Roong Aroon, they have a holistic approach in project work. So they also embraced mental maturity as part of their learning for the development of the self. Mental maturity is actually part of the pedagogy for transformation, and it's connected to the acknowledgement and development of the mind. The children from very young age learn how the mind functions and learn all the disciplines related to the development of the mind, such as building up their own character consciously, building up their personality and choosing how they would like to be, analyzing how they are, building up their habits, their virtues. So the materials, activities, and exercises of mental maturity will give the children and adults the key to better understanding of the self, understanding of the family, understanding of the community. So I'm very happy to be here working at Roong Aroon.
So some of these, I think it's important when she also notes that it's also the adults at Roong Aroon that take part in this development and understanding. So I just have a few pictures of some of the different activities. So Victoria, over 30 years in Nepal, where she opened her own schools for very disadvantaged children, created some extremely tangible activities to help explore different aspects of the mind and mindfulness. So this one is about the 3 keys for right speech. So, when we are speaking, we want to make sure, are we speaking the truth? Are we speaking from kindness? And are we speaking from a place of usefulness? So she has an activity with role play and with changing messages, changing what someone is saying, to see if they can open these 3 doors to these 3 rooms, and then know that their communication is right, meeting that idea of right speech in Buddhism. Another activity she did with our grade 9 boys is called the iced body, which actually explores the process of dying. Because especially in Western cultures, death and dying is kind of a taboo subject, and what happens to our mind and our body when we go through that end of life process. How can we be prepared ourselves to face that transition? And Victoria believes through understanding the process and actually interviewing people or experiencing people going through that process also is important for us to be prepared ourselves when we reach that point. And so the students undergo a variety of different movement activities and discussion activities to explore that process of dying. So there's many, many of these very tangible activities. Even how do you analyze your thoughts? She has one where you have black pebbles and white pebbles, and you take time and observe your thoughts as they arise. And, you will take a pebble to identify, is this a negative thought? Is this a positive thought? And through this, really learning to analyze and think about those thoughts that are happening, and what do you do then? There's other activities. So I thought that this was really quite practical, because when we are approaching mindfulness, often we aren't sure where to go or how do we really explore these quite esoteric and abstract things. And so through her mental maturity program, Victoria's developed some very, very simple and tangible exercises that even kindergarten students can grasp and do. So I'm very happy that she's joined, and she's really working with the teachers to also bring these practices into our units and our daily teaching with the students. Okay. I'd like then for my managing director, Kun Sunisa, to share her perspective on the school.
I'm Sunisa. I'm a director of Roong Aroon International School. We are a 2-year-old school, new and young. The organized team hope and dream that we will connect the Buddhist and holistic core value into our school life and culture. Mindfulness is a very important tool. We are lucky that we have the energetic and fearless team of teachers who have their passion in education. Now, we are happy on our journey to learn deep and deep in ourselves and holistic education. We strongly believe that we are a piece of the jigsaw of a big picture of wholeness in the world. Thank you.
Okay. So journey, when I talked to William about doing this presentation, for me it was challenging to think what could be interesting because I am in the middle of the stream. It's quite interesting that David West brought that point up. I told William, it's like, I'm in the middle of the river, swimming in the middle of the river. I can see the bank on this side. I can see my goal on that side. But at the moment, I'm just swimming, trying to go along. And it's hard for me to see where everything that I've come from. I'm just trying to stay afloat and move forward. And he encouraged me to come and do this presentation. But I think, picking up my head and looking at the people in the river with me, I'm sharing their voices as well, because this is a journey that cannot really be done alone, for sure. And very grateful for the people that have been with me. Something Ajahn said in an interview really comes back in that context of lifelong learning, that every place presents a learning opportunity. And each time I've been at Roong Aroon School, I get to an emotional breaking point, to the point where, my former husband, who was with me for 2 of those times at Roong Aroon, would often ask me, why do you keep going back? Why do you keep going back? But I feel like it's a community where we are allowed to explore and to become better. And it's my hope that the learning opportunity that Roong Aroon presents me as an individual, that's something that I'm still working through and working with, because there's something I feel I haven't learned yet. I haven't got to the other side of this big understanding. And for me, it's something that connects back to a presentation by Michio Kaku about becoming a global civilization in order for the human species to survive. And I often think that the 2 linchpins for us to really come together as people have to be communication and culture. Because time and time again, whenever we're having issues at school when we get emotional or upset with each other, or we have conflict or something, it almost always comes back down to communication and culture. And I'm finding this really interesting right now. Just the way we actually express ourselves from the Thai to the Western perspective is almost opposite. And how the language we speak, the culture we come from, inform the way we think. And so we're asking a group of individuals who are comfortable in themselves to some extent and their skills and their ability to communicate, we're asking everyone to really change the foundational ways of thinking. And it's quite a challenge. It's really, really a challenge. So, Thai is highly contextual. Thais don't just listen to the words, they look at body language, gesture, facial expression, the feeling of the room. They're very relational. Relationships and who you're speaking to, it really informs how you speak. They're quite indirect. They would rather talk around the problem or basically avoiding confrontation. That's often seen as very negative. And it's not, these are my generalizations, okay? So based on my experience, and not everyone is the same and everyone is at a different place. So please do understand that I know this is quite generalized. And when I say emotional is not okay, that's not exactly true, but especially we're always trying to separate from the emotion, from the purpose of the communication, because often when we receive or we give communication, there's emotion behind it. So we need to be aware of that emotion. And if it's a negative emotion, we need to really explore that and try not to share that negative emotion. Whereas in English, we're quite low context. We're very transactional. Our information has to do with giving and sharing information. In that way, we're quite direct. We often see confrontation in a sense as okay. We challenge assumptions all the time. We ask questions all the time. And so we often can think that some confrontation could be beneficial. And we often wear our hearts on our sleeve. We can get very emotional. We often push emotion with our communication. So just in the way we frame our thoughts and develop our expressions are quite different. So we've had to learn to be very careful and aware with our language. And our cultures as well are quite different. And that itself, we always have to kind of come back and inform ourselves, where is my mind when I'm coming to this? Like, common sense is common to the culture that sense is developed within. So it can be very different. What we think, oh, of course they know this. No, we don't necessarily know that. Oh, everyone has the same understanding what clean is. No, we actually have to really come and talk. What do you mean when you say clean? What do you mean when you say facilitate the students? What do you mean when you say address the students and explore the students that are in front of you to develop your lessons? We always have to come back and develop a shared understanding of that point. And sometimes more than once, it takes a lot of time to do that. And one of the most important shifts I made when I moved overseas in 1990, I've been living in Asia predominantly since 1990, is learning that the question why, which is such a basic and child curiosity question of why, but often that question comes loaded with so much emotion and judgment of why. And so an important shift that someone gave to me a long time ago is, instead of observing and asking, why is this happening? Why is it this way? To change to notice that, or I'm noticing that. I'm noticing that you're having some challenges with changing the way you're approaching this problem, instead of why aren't you doing something different? Trying to really be mindful about what's behind the why, and making it a gentler question, and really exploring what it is that's being observed behind the why. And as a child of change, I've lived in 6 different countries and 42 different homes in my 54 years of life. I'm very comfortable with change, but not everyone is. And coming to the understanding that change is important, but not everyone changes at the same pace or same way, has been a really big understanding for me. And what I appreciate about my Thai colleagues at Roong Aroon, they may be resistant to change initially, and change may be slow, but it's because they want to understand deeply. Because once they accept and make that change, it's a deep and meaningful change. It's not just okay, we're going to do this because. It's okay, we understand why this is essential, and now we're going to move in that direction, which it took me a while to adjust to coming to that understanding of that change, and really appreciating the deepness of meaning and understanding behind it. For me, a lot of my understanding came from this activity that we all went into thinking, we need to translate the Roong Aroon competencies and really explore how those relate to the IB learner profile and approaches to learning and where we want the students to go. We thought this was going to be, not a very challenging activity. And in fact, it was said, hey, Tamara, can you translate this? And I'm like, wow, you can see here on the left, the kind of translations, the rough translations I got. So I was like, no, I think we need to discuss these. We could spend 2 hours talking about this thing on the left before we can come up to the core meaning and the appropriate and best suited words in English that we came to on the right. It became such a deep activity that led to such understanding about how we may have the same words, but we understand them in completely different ways. They have completely different feelings for each of us, and trying to really fine tune that understanding. It took us a couple of months to go through the 5 competencies and translate from the Thai to an English that was understandable, but also captured the core essence of what we had in Thai. And I can't even adequately convey the physical sense of understanding at the core of me when we hit it, when it was like, yes, and we all were in sync, like, yes, this is it. It was such a deep and meaningful experience for me, and really gave me a sense of team and collaboration that I don't think I'd ever had before. Sorry, I'm getting a little weepy, because it really was such a deep feeling for me. So I think for my experience, I'm still exploring that idea of the communication and culture, and how are we going to be able to transcend this as human beings, so that we can move on into that evolution that I can't remember who was talking about the evolution. I think David Marshak was talking about that next evolution of humankind. And I came across this quote that really kind of epitomizes for me that sense that we are kind of trapped within language and culture that we might not even recognize, and that often the discomfort we find goes back to these things, and we're recognizing in ourselves where we have certain understandings and beliefs that we grew up with, or that were given to us through our experiences or through our cultures. So for me, that's been quite a meaningful journey of understanding. Yeah, I want to thank everyone who joined so much for coming to share. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties that made us start late. I wish we'd been able to overcome that so that we could have gone a bit further. And I definitely, my email is at the end of this, so I'm definitely happy to engage in any discussion if anyone has questions or wants to contact or speak more with me about the process, because it's really been really an interesting and fascinating and really moving process for me to go through this experience. And I hope that I've shared just even a glimmer of that. And I hope that everyone will have a chance to come and experience not just Roong Aroon School, but also Roong Aroon International School at some point, because it's quite a lovely and unique place.